Hey guys, so word of warning. I wasn't feeling good this episode. I think it's allergy season, right? So I'm pretty sure there was something going around too. I was kind of getting off some, being sick. I was coughing a bit, so if you hear me cough, once or twice during the episode, that's kind of why what that's what happened. So, well, I hope you guys enjoy the episode. And this one's on basically imported media? Hold on. Foreign media. Well, I hope you guys enjoy. So, kind of hard to open up with this first one, but I think just to kind of get out of the way, I think it really, I guess all industries kind of have their views on like what's more important, what industry is more important than the other. Obviously, like in America, the film industry is so big that like you have independent movies all the way up to mega blockbuster level super movies or whatever that are being made like currently right now, probably
Mhm.
like 10 or 12 at the current moment. Heck, Superman sequel just got announced. Where like we kind of opened up about this, um, it's where you can kind of get a sense of how the general public or just the country's view on the industry kind of affects how or what level the quality of the movie is.
Mhm.
Or like just like genres too, I guess you could say. Because, you know, you might have a little bit more of an, I don't want to say an artsy fartsy film,
Mhm.
but you might have a little bit more of a European artsy fartsy film compared to say something made in the Americas where you know comic book movies are so ingrained into our veins, like that's going to be the big ticket item. And then you kind of hold on, something just beeped.
Oh,
But oh, never mind. But you know you could kind of tell because like you look at movies that aren't in this big like pop culture zeitgeist
Mhm.
type of like genre. Of course, like look at Dune, look at all these other like big like book slash comic book reboot movies, 95th time they're doing it type movies, and they have astronomical budgets because that's what
Mhm.
sells. And then you go look at like more, I don't want to say contemporary movies. I don't think contemporary is the right word, but you look at more, I don't want to say period or like non-action oriented movies. There's not as much like there's still care into them, but I feel like there's times that the level of cinematography or the level of what can go into them kind of just really depends on the view. Especially right now, we have the big superhero boom that's been lasting over like almost 20 years. Um,
Mhm.
but like I said, going back to it, America has a big capital on media. You have so much. We have some nowadays. We have television shows that have the same budget as like the big screen movies. Of course, like some of their budgets are or the effects are like a decade behind, but it's
although although I find it really funny that you mentioned about like budget because apparently most of the budget is just most of the budget is based around from what I heard the budget for most of like the major blockbusters that you see in America they're almost always for either the director that is hired and or big name actors.
oh
Everything else,
100%.
That's mostly what they're wasting all their money on, because I remember about looking at the budget that I was looking at Godzilla minus one's budget, and it's like that for like consider like, and that still looks good from having like considerably lower resources than the average American blockbuster. Like
Yeah, and I guess
that just shows something's wrong here.
but
Something's wrong here with America.
that is a good point. Like, very topical. Um, look at all these Avengers movies. I believe Robert Downey Jr. is asking for like a good couple $100 million just to play Doctor Doom. Like if like a quarter of the budget is just going in on one actor, it's just like that. It's wild. That is crazy to me that the movie would have to make back like 12, almost 12 times the amount that it was or whatever to be made, then like because because his like paycheck is so astronomically high. It's like, and I get it. Some of these actors have like now live these lavish lifestyles and all this kind of stuff, but at what point do you have to ask is like why are they spending so much, or why are they asking for such a large amount of money to do it? I get it, doing some like crazy stuff or some stuff that you could get hurt doing, it can be costly, obviously, like especially in our current medical system. I just think that it's wild that like the budget for some of these guys, it's just it's wild. It is genuinely wild how much like some of these actors are asking for sometimes roles that they're barely in. Like I don't know, like say The Rock is in a movie for like 20 minutes and he asks for like $30 million. It's like you're only in the movie for like a quarter of the movie. Why do you need like $20 million?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you had a point, Jenna, I'll let you get to that.
Yeah,
I
I
do
don't
have a
want to
thought.
derail it. I don't want to derail it too much on like into that section, but something that I actually found really interesting is that I think it's like it's actually really interesting in that, in a way, looking at different actually looking at different movies from different cultures can
Mhm.
actually help widen your view not only on the types of movies being made, but also the many cultures and countries around the world. I mean, heck, even in France, like France is often considered the birthplace of cinema. So these like different countries do have a part to play in the development and styles and all that stuff in the industry.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like looking at trying to say find the right word for it. That's the problem. It's not that I don't know what I'm talking about. It's like I'm trying to find the right word. Yeah, looking at French films, they are basically the progenitor of like filmmaking in a sort of sense, and just the way they understand how to, I guess, filmmake, how they
Mhm.
filmmake, how they tell their stories.
Mhm.
Sometimes their stuff isn't direct in your face. Sometimes there is like the deeper inner meaning that,
And actually, sorry,
yeah, no, it's like it's the deeper inner meaning that can be lost on, unfortunately, can be lost on the American like psyche.
actually,
Mhm.
I find it really interesting that you mentioned that, because I remember in my college class for film production, one of the clips that my professor showed it was a clip from the movie Let the Right One In. I forgot which country it was from, but it was like that one scene where the main vampire kid actually goes to the hospital and then kills a guy. Um, what I find really funny is that there's a scene there's a scene where the that character is climbing up the wall. And I'm just
Hmm.
sitting here like, if this was made in America, they would add an obnoxious string violin sound effect. And
Maybe.
that just does not happen in that movie.
I think yeah, it's sometimes it's just the people that are making movies in America also don't really understand like certain like subtleties or concepts because like
Mhm.
oh I want to make it look kind of creepy, I'm gonna add this like string violin or whatever into it. It's like maybe sometimes it can be more unsettling to not have like that effect, have like a little bit of like background music, but or just something kind of unsettle you.
But I think but yeah, it's at this point, it's becoming a crutch, overused, and often oversaturated. And it's like, can you guys seriously not think of anything? It's like I get it. At one point, on one hand, I get it, but on the other hand, it's like, can't you just be a little creative?
It's a like a two it's like an almost 200-year-old like industry, so I mean like you know I gotta imagine that like I wouldn't say everything's been made. Obviously, there a lot of people can still create, until people can't
Or
create no more. But
I mean, going back to what I was saying, like this could this is the benefit of looking at different movies from different
yeah,
cultures, like aside from the obvious stuff from Japan or
oh yeah,
India and the UK. There's even stuff from Mexico, Korea, Italy, France, Brazil, Iran, Sweden, and many
yeah.
others, even obscure ones where their industries sometimes are being funded through entirely different means because of how
Oh,
small they are.
100%. And you can look at you say that, and unfortunately, that it can be a thing. It is a little bit more of a common thing in the past where the industry is actually funded by the government, but not like in a good way, like a kind of a little bit more of a propaganda machine kind of way,
Yeah.
rather than.
Yeah.
But I think kind of goes back to your point about like the culture of like these countries is that you get stories from like Korea or like Mexico or say like I don't want to say Madagascar, but I'll say Madagascar or as a good good example too, or just like some of these like non-American, non-Eastern Asian, non-European films. It also shows like not even just their culture, but how like some of the people in this country like can make a commentary on their government, commentary on current issues.
Like with
They,
minus one,
yeah,
like with
yeah,
Godzilla minus
that's a
one.
good way. That's another good way to put it because, or even Shin Godzilla, I would say
Yeah, too. That too.
because they're both in two different ways of how to express, commentary on the government or commentary on current issues. Is Shin Godzilla was a commentary on how long and bureaucratic they like dealt with the earthquakes and the tsunami back in 2011, where minus one and the original Godzilla were technically still ill commentaries on World War II and coming back from World War II and having the ghosts of what you did haunt you, so to speak. Obviously, their
Well,
messages are much different from each other, you know, 80
well, I
years
kind of yeah.
separated, but well,
Well, I kind of heard with Godzilla minus one is that in some ways you could argue that Godzilla in that film is kind of meant to represent like the overall anger of wartime stuff.
Yeah, I mean, it totally is. Totally is. It's like I said, they're two separate messages. Um, and I think, but that's the thing. It's not just Japan, obviously.
Yeah.
You know, it's I would think that like you have like South American countries that make their own films. That there are ones that you do have these filmmakers that are making commentaries or making jobs at their leaders, and sometimes it obviously if they're not, those leaders aren't paying attention, then everybody else is going to understand or see why it's funny.
Yeah.
I mean,
Um,
so I mean, ugh, sorry, I got something on my.
but I was just gonna say, like, John, do you have any thoughts? Because sorry, we were both hogging a bit of that.
Yeah, dude, you go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. I think you guys really do have a point. And going back to budget, I mean, you got to think about not only just like the currency of the budgets, but you also have to think about like, what I've if there was anything I learned when I was trying to go to film school, when they were talking about film budgets, it is better to be under budget than over budget.
Yes.
Because I mean, like for example, look at the budget of these big, huge movies compared to budgets that were a long time ago. Like, look at the budget of Barbie, for example, by Greta Gerwig. Look at
Mm-hmm.
that budget versus the budget of any Marvel movie.
Oh yeah,
I mean, there's a drastic difference because they're not relying. Because I think with Barbie, it's showing that you don't need all this CGI. You don't need, like, obviously there's some moments you do need CGI, but you don't need all of this CGI. You don't need all of this being something that you know. And another thing is like one of the things I like about like Guillermo del Toro as a filmmaker is Guillermo del Toro is very much about practical effects.
Yes.
yeah, and
And
yeah,
And
go ahead.
I was just and I'm saying like I'm actually pretty interested in Guillermo del Toro's Frankenstein movie that's
yeah,
coming out this year.
yeah,
It's like you see stuff like scary stories to tell in the dark that he did. It's like, oh my gosh, yes, please. Every time I see practical effects at this point, it's like, yes, please give me all that.
That's
yeah,
why, yeah, and that's why I like movies from like obviously we have some very good movies coming out in the
yeah,
last like decade or whatever. But I
yeah.
think like there's times that I appreciate older movies that you like all they really had because our computers were like basically upgraded calculators at the point in the 80s and the like early 90s that like all they really could do was like splice footage together, but they had to do it pretty manually. Obviously there
Mhm,
was like very primitive software to splice footage together,
mhm,
but we didn't have the level of computer generated effects and all this kind of stuff that we have now that we had so long ago. So they had to make up for it with all these massive, like big practical effects.
mhm.
And I think that's why I kind of like um early like that's why I like some overseas movies that do they understand that they don't have the capability for this CGI. So they end up using practical effects to like cover up for the shoddy
and
CGI.
even if they do use CGI, it's only really partial
Yeah,
CGI on actual models.
it's very minimal, and that's why I appreciate the ones who do practical effects. There was a
Yeah.
movie called The Fableman. I think it's called the Fablemans. I think it's called The Fablemans. But I think the movie is kind of like semi based on the story of Spielberg,
Mm-hmm.
I believe, of Steven Spielberg. And it was showing how this teenager was creating things for practical effects.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, okay, this is good to show that they were trying to do practical effects at the time.
Yeah.
But when you think about foreign movies, like, and also when you do a foreign movie, sometimes based on a person in their language is also
Mhm.
interesting.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
You have to
but
work around the sensibilities of the country, I would say too.
Yeah,
yeah,
and what I find actually, and it's interesting how even American cinemas are introducing more international movies through things like A24, Neon, or other independent studios,
Or Fathom. Oh,
or random, whatever. Yeah,
yeah.
or probably because Hollywood is still very expensive for some reason. It's like,
Oh yeah.
but at the same time, there are like still many other stuff in countries just won't don't always make it to an American market. It's like, I mean, yes, some of it could be that they sucked writing wise or other factors, but
yeah,
although it should be noted that just because a film did poorly at a box office equivalent doesn't mean it was terrible, but it's just some things are just you can't, it's not always easy to translate well into
right,
another culture.
right, yeah,
So that's something to take into consideration.
That's a thing too. I
mhm,
definitely don't want to dive too into that, but like office numbers, a lot of people have been like, that's the thing that people are worried about nowadays. Like, look at Fantastic Four and Superman, like some of the best movies of the year. Like, not just because they're superhero films, but like some genuinely good, like back to form, like films that just happen to have superheroes in them and not superhero films. And like some of the box office numbers weren't like impressive for the first week or two, and people are like, "Oh, the movie's a failure. It's a bad movie." It's like it's not. You actually have to watch the movie before you can say it's bad. That's like obviously there's a lot of people that like the Zack Snyder movie universe. So there's going to be these people that don't like the new thing, so they're like, "Oh, new thing sucks. I like the old thing. Let's bring back, this type of Superman or whatever, gritty Superman." A little bit off subject. Kind of going back to um the thing. I think I because I want to bring back how budget and practical effects. I think the American moviegoers, or really worldwide moviegoers, kind of see like practical effects nowadays as cheap. You know,
Yeah,
it,
I think it's probably just because we're so spoiled by CGI
yes,
and
yes.
all the stuff that it does.
yeah,
That's why you get like all these. I hate to say it. I know hyperfixation. That's why you get a lot of people when they see like dudes in suits, dudes in colorful spandex going around punching monsters, but they don't like amplify it with CGI and all that kind of stuff. They're like, "Oh, this is some cheap like Power Rangers crap or whatever." It's like you have had so much. Here's it. Okay, actually, another good thing. I want. I was just thinking about right in the middle of the sentence. A lot of times, I think a lot of Americans or just people in general sometimes care more about the graphical fidelity of stuff and how everything looks rather than like what it like pertains to in the story.
yeah,
that
Because
that kind of seems to be a very obvious thing that people are picking up on with
yeah,
some people.
it's like
yeah,
okay, I'm not saying Lawnmower Man is a good movie and like the CG is any good. Lawnmower Man has his problems. Sorry, that's a joke about like old CG, old B movie or whatever. But it's like you get so many people worried about how real a character looks, and when they see a character that is like clearly a guy in makeup, for some reason, like, oh man, they cheaped out on this character. Why did they make him like a CG character? It's like, sometimes you can tell.
And not
Yeah,
even like the CGI that is coming out recently is like that. Even the CGI that's coming out recently, that thing's gonna date itself really quickly.
of
It's like,
course, one
and
hundred
that's
percent.
and that's the great thing about practical effects is that they don't age. Like, I mean,
Well,
sure, the materials change, but it's still like it's there.
I
And it's
think,
like, yeah.
yeah, it's there. It's lit properly, and I think that was another thing I was thinking about, like mid sentence a little bit ago. Is I feel like why. Here's the thing. The reason why Jurassic Park 1993 CGI scenes work so well, and some stuff all the way up to early to mid 2000s works so well, is because these studios were lighting things properly for cinema. They were
Yeah.
lighting
Yeah.
they were lighting their CGI models for movies. We've talked about this over and over again. They light things for phone screens now. It needs to be bright. You need to be able to see it. All this
But
kind of stuff.
which is ironic because there are still moments when I'm watching it on like the
Can't
TV
see
or
shit.
something and I can't see anything.
That
That's
was one. That
Go
was
ahead.
one of the problems I had with watching a movie a long time ago. Was like, why the heck is this scene so freaking dark? Why can't I see anything?
I mean, I guess that's an indicator it should be seen in a dark room, but I didn't read the fine print, I guess.
And I think it kind of goes both ways. Don't know how to light something properly, or sometimes they use the darkness as a crutch to cover up how bad like the character design
Yeah.
is and stuff, or the
Mhm.
graphical fidelity of the model, which it's very unfortunate that like we care so much about the graphical fidelity of the CGI characters that like some people will rate a movie solely on like the graphical fidelity of something, or they'll rate a character solely on the graphical fidelity. It's like
Mhm.
sometimes I just want to have to worry about the story and or how it's told,
Yeah.
rather than just how realistic, oh, can I see the hair follicles on Thanos's like neck beard or whatever? I don't care if I literally noticed all this shit 5 years later. I don't care whether or not I see the hair follicles on this character. Like
I mean,
maybe I'm a little bit reaching, but
Mhm.
but getting kind of on track a
yeah.
Mhm.
bit, but I think thankfully with at least with some of the countries that do their own films, they actually do treat it with a bit more dignity and
Mhm.
respect
Yep.
than
Right?
with like America being like shove it out there, see what happens. I mean, granted, I'm not saying it only happens in America. I'm sure that it happens in other places as well. It's just I don't know. It could just be like as Americans, we just see that more often with America, and who knows, maybe there's a similar problem in like UK or something. There's probably problems like that in the UK or Japan or
Oh,
whatever. But yeah,
definitely, definitely.
it's just what I'm saying is it. in those other countries, it's taken a bit more seriously than in America.
Well, I mean, obviously there are situations where you get like movies that are made because thing is popular. Let's make this
Yeah, that's true.
thing, and it's
Yeah,
like a
yeah.
dumpster fire. I mean, look at Al Oni. That's like made off of like a Flash game or whatever.
Yeah.
That movie is absolutely terrible. Like there's a bunch of like, and we can get into this as a different topic, but I just want to bring it up. There is this whole thing in subculture that's been going on for like long time of like movie grading systems of like the letter systems. And like I would hazard to say that that specific movie is probably like a D or C tier movie. Just because of the quality, overall quality, and not just like the visuals. And I think like you get um, a lot of people that think they understand how to rate movies and how to like talk about movies. They will they'll say, "Oh yeah, this is definitely like some type of B movie type stuff." It's like you don't understand really what constitutes like this type of movie. Like you
And I
actually have to understand like the level of like, yeah,
and when
go
I
ahead.
find I heard this um I've heard this like comment like some like just a bunch of other times about whenever like people critique or actually look at movies from a different country, they always view it from an American lens instead of
Yes,
actually looking at it on their own level. And I just kind of look at that and I just go like, that's not an American movie though. It's
I
like,
will. I will
yeah.
note because I had this interaction happen to me a couple days ago. There's a little bit of racism involved or xenophobia involved with some of that because like
Or
you
some
get
of it is
some.
just ignorance.
Yeah, I mean that's what
Mhm.
some of that race. That's what that racism is. It's ignorance. Um, but you get like people that will say, well, I don't like how thing Japan does these things. I like how it's done over here because it's a lot more simpler. It's a lot more, in the moment. And you know, to each their own, obviously. You know, I was just trying to be funny in this
Mhm.
interaction where it's like it was about giant robots, by the way. But
Mhm.
it's like combining big flashy combining sequences are a lot cooler. If you don't like them, you won't survive the winter. I was just being kind of joking around a little bit, but I think like it kind of goes to the point of what you're saying is that like people kind of view these type of media through an American lens in American filmmaking standards rather than like purely like what is the culture around these types of media? What goes into it? What are they trying to sell like this movie to? You know,
Yeah.
I, yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
and I think. Oh, did you want to say something, John? Or
Oh no, no. I think as it does depend on the country, and it does depend on like what is the story meaning to this individual from this country. And
Yes.
if people don't understand the thing of that culture, then they're going to be like, well, I don't like how that person did it. And I think one of the reasons they would say they don't like how it was done is because they don't understand the culture of where that person comes from.
yeah,
Exactly.
like
Yeah.
for example, for me anyway,
Hmm.
and I'm sure some of you, and I'm sure like you people here, I'm
Hmm.
only really familiar with anime and manga in
Yeah.
Japan, mostly because we import we get we they import that crap over here a lot. And
Well,
also
yeah.
Yeah.
and also a slight bit of Bollywood, mostly because of my my college class, and I should specify that when Bollywood is mentioned, when like the term Bollywood is specifically for Hindi cinema. There's a lot of subsections of India cinema, including I think a region called Telugu, just from a quick search, and that is called Hollywood. There's a lot of Leewoods, I guess. And like and what you find in Bollywood, in these Bollywood stuff, is more colorful, flashy dance and song sequences, and those things, according to my professor, actually are a bigger revenue source than the actual movie itself. But of course, that country's movies are not restricted to that. There's like different genres. I mean, like, heck, on Fandango, for instance, there's like different movies coming out of India that are horror or fantasy adventure. Like I said, mostly from Telugu.
I mean, also kind of look at because there's also a lot of stories. We kind of, I think we mentioned this behind the scenes, but we didn't mention it here. There's also a lot of stories that they're telling that are important to the culture of the country. Look at a
Yeah.
lot of it kind of became popular in America for a bit, but look at a lot of the Necha movies coming out of China.
Oh yeah.
All this kind of stuff. Stories of Journey of the West, Necha, a lot of these like Chinese folklore type characters, became kind of big because like the industry over in China like loves to tell these big fantastical stories about these specific characters, and it perpetually just goes on because it's such a popular story.
Yeah.
The whole story of these pantheons is so popular in in that area. It really does show. Can't talk. I know what I'm trying to say, but I can't talk. I guess for one thing, there's a bit of an evolution to like the standards for some of these movies as well. Take a look at something made in the 70s over there. It might be something a lot more schlocky. Some people might even say like a B movie, or some people might call it a kung fu movie because that was like a big thing back in the day. Hey, nowadays they're doing all these big like animations, all these big like super mega blockbuster or level of CG, but the story might not be to like our sensibilities. That's why you might have some of these like movies that become super huge over in China, but the American audience doesn't really, grasp it. The American audience doesn't see what makes it as big. Like I believe it was Nisha 2. That one just came out around the time, and I don't think it was going against Superman, but it was coming. There was a movie that came over to China around the same time that Nisha was doing a lot better than the American made movie that usually would do very well overseas. So
Yeah, I just actually find it really. I saw the numbers on like the box office number it got, and I was thinking, like, even with like the cultural context in mind, I just kind of look at that and I go, how the heck, what in the world, where did that money come from? Mostly as a joke, but like I've just never like seen that.
It just, like I said, I think it also goes into kind of how the government or like the general public kind of views the material, because like I said, superhero movies get bigger budgets nowadays because that's what sells. But if you get mythological stories over here or there because these things always sell or these things are very important to the culture, then of course you're going to get like big budget movies about the thing. That's why all these like war movies are always get like huge budgets, because America really likes
Yeah.
war for some reason. I'm not going to get into that. That's a
Unfortunately.
totally different conversation.
Mhm.
But I just really think that, besides like the perception of like how the world views like certain types of media, it really kind of does also go down to what certain countries, what stories they want to tell. It really
Mhm.
does go down to the stories
Yeah.
they want to tell. Because if we're always telling like war based stories because we can't let go of a thing that happened like 90 years ago, we're gonna keep telling these stories of stuff that happened 90 years ago, even though technically we're
I
in
mean,
times right now.
I mean, granted, some of it is just preserving history, but I'm like, people like museums and stuff are already preserving that history. You don't
Yes.
always need the movies doing it for you.
Mhm.
Yeah,
But
because yeah.
and I was just gonna say like for seeing different types of movies, uh film festivals are a very good
Yes.
example on actually seeing different types of movies from around the world, depending on the film festival, because it depends on like the genre or the like how long the length is or whatever.
Mhm.
So it depends on that, but that's something.
Yeah, or like if your theater likes to show non like big blockbuster movies every so often. I mean, obviously some theaters are showing like flashback cinema, but I would say even go definitely check out like if your theater is showing a foreign film, go see a foreign film and see how you feel about the foreign film compared to an American film, so to speak.
Mhm.
Did you want to add something, John?
Yeah, I was just thinking about like, one of the things Greta Gerwig had was she was I think she was on a podcast interview or something like that, and the person mentioned, "Oh, well, we heard you're going to be working on the Chronicles of Narnia," and basically what she said was something about like, she wants to do it and she wants to do it well and to show reverence to the story C.S. Lewis wrote, because it's kind of like when she said something about like it's like when Americans try to do Shakespeare or something, and it's like you kind of have to you kind of have to respect the idea of these characters are not American. These characters are
Yes.
from the UK, and you got to respect that. And
100%.
Yeah.
yeah.
That is
Like if you're
100% true.
and
Hmm.
I even have like and it's something I've been thinking about is recently is if you're going to create a story about a different culture from a privileged background, then you absolutely have a responsibility to treat it respectfully, especially
Hmm.
if you're going to be showing it to a wide audience.
Yes, that's 100% the thing. Is I think that's why, unfortunately, those Chronicles of Narnia movies that they did back in like the 2000s, back in the big like book movie like thing, like teen
Hmm.
book movie thing back in the
Hmm.
early 2000s. That's why some of it didn't do very well because they didn't understand the
The context.
story.
Yeah,
Yeah,
didn't understand the context.
yes.
That's what's interesting about Greta Gerwig is that she's a thinker when it comes to film.
Mhm.
She really thinks about her movies that she creates, and um, I don't know. I think it's interesting. I I'm curious of what the first trailer is going to be. That's what I'm mainly curious about, because they said they're supposed to be releasing this in 2026, and we're already almost done in 2025. So my
Yeah,
guess, if we were to get a trailer, my guess would probably be either March of next year,
it'd be
maybe
kind of
March of next
it'd be
year.
kind
I
of
don't know.
funny if you were talking about it and then we get like a trailer tomorrow.
Oh
Oh my
gosh,
gosh.
That'd be
they
funny.
just started like 2, 3 weeks ago. They just
Oh,
started
okay, never mind.
filming. They just
Oh,
started
okay.
filming a while ago, so we're
Well,
not going to get trailer.
It's not like that hasn't happened before where people are talking about like a trailer for something and then we see a trailer or like the next day or like 3 hours later.
Yeah.
But I really do think it
Mhm.
really goes for all like stories,
Mhm.
especially if somebody from another country is adapting that type of media.
Mhm.
You at least need to have somewhat
Mhm.
should. I'm not saying you have to biblically know to biblical levels of what this about the source material, but I think you should have
Mhm.
at least somewhat of a respect for some of the source material. I'm not saying you always should,
Mhm.
or like I said, to biblical levels,
Or
but
like copying it word for word.
exactly. You don't need to copy it word for word or be beat for beat for
Mhm.
for these movies to work.
Because at that point, it's pointless. Like
Yeah,
the How to Train Your Dragon live action thingy majiggy.
yes.
Yeah.
But I definitely feel like there should be a little bit more, I think reverence is the correct term, or
Even
respect for the original source material.
even the approach for the Lord of the Ring movies are different from the books
Yes.
because like, you know, they didn't they didn't film the Lord of the Ring movies like the books were in the chapters, but they filmed them through the timeline in the appendices,
Uh-huh.
which is why they worked so well. Like for example, Shelob's Lair, which is a scene I always have to skip every time I see any of these Lord of the Ring movies. I can't watch the Shelob's Lair scene.
Uh-huh.
So, so technically, Shelob's Lair is at the end of the Two Towers,
Yes.
technically, in the Lord of the Rings books.
Yes.
And because it's kind of like with the Lord of the Rings books, there's kind of like an A and B plot line,
Mm-hmm.
especially starting in the Two Towers and the Return of the King. There's kind of like this
Yes.
A and B plot line going on. And obviously that would be have been really hard to adapt in film if you were doing it by the books,
Yes.
by the times of the events in the books. But since they looked into the appendices, they were like, okay, this is the timeline in the appendices, and this is the timeline of the books. What are we gonna? How are we gonna do this? So,
Yeah, because they did something similar for the Hobbit trilogy. Obviously, that's like the Hobbit movies were only
yeah,
like really
yeah,
one-ish book.
yeah.
Yeah,
That
but
went longer than it needed to go.
that's the point is like you have like some of these like stories that were
Mhm,
really only like maybe one book or like one or two books, but they
mhm.
got turned into three movies or whatever, and they moved like stuff around. Like, but that's my point. I'm not like
Yeah.
we're not gonna get into the quality of the Hobbit,
Mhm,
all that kind of stuff. It's just more like stuff that happens later in the book. Sometimes they put in like in the movie just to make it kind of work a little bit better for the flow of the story. Whether
mhm.
or not that worked in execution, that's a different topic. So
A
Yeah.
totally different thing.
So to round this episode off, I do want to mention unrelated note, but going back to one more thing. From my experience, if you want to take away anything from college classes about movie and TV production stuff, whatever, and you at least get to watch or become aware of stuff you
Mhm,
you've never even heard of before. So that at least is a benefit. I was introduced to like movies that I've even if it's just snippets I never
mhm.
even heard about. And that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
I think it might be a thing, and I'm guilty of it too. But I think a lot of people need to watch a lot more non-American movies to
Mhm,
kind of get a feeling of what stories other countries tell. Because if you're only like frame of reference for any of these types of stories is an American like filmmaking reference, then you don't really have, because you'll only have like a one-dimensional type of frame of reference, especially if you'll watch superhero movies all the time, or you talk about like freaking action movies all the time. You if you only watch action movies all the time, you don't get a lot of like better stories. I guess this one more thing, it's a little bit of a joke, but somebody made a good point. Is like, don't rate all this kind of stuff when you only have one like frame of reference. Like if you only watch shonen anime and maybe like 2 or 3 Ghibli films, then you really don't have a good frame of reference for like anime, because you only know like shonen battle anime and like 1 or 2 Ghibli films that like somebody talked about like 30 years ago. So it's people need to watch more movies from other countries, or they just need to watch more movies that aren't just big popular thing.
And it's not trying, and sorry, because
I've
just heard that comment being used as a sort of like, yeah, like I've heard of that comment off, like sometimes being used as like an elitism sort of way, but it's like that's not what we're saying here. We're
I'm not being
saying,
elitist
I
with it.
know. It's just to clarify. Just to clarify for some people that it's just a benefit to watch more movies so you can expand your frame of reference.
Yes, that's what
you
I
can
mean.
do.
Yeah. So you
I
have a
know
wider,
I know what you mean. I'm just making a clarification. This because that's just something I've
100%.
heard about.
100%. This is no elitism thing. It 100% is it, so you have a wider frame of reference for different types of movies. Cuz I don't know, you might like say you like American filmmaking, but you might start watching stuff from China or stuff from Mexico or stuff from like Brazil or Russia or France. You might start liking that form of cinema. It just that's really the thing is you. I don't think you would necessarily say, "Oh, well, I hate American cinema. It's all shit. It's all the same." Well, sometimes it is, but it's just having a little bit more of a frame of reference for different cultures of cinema, I think is just good and beneficial for the modern like moviegoer. Because if you only, you know, here's a food allegory. If you only eat pizza every day, you don't know how like, or if you only eat like, let's say you'll eat American food all the time, you have a very white palate. You don't know how non-American foods taste. You don't know if you'll like it. So I mean, that's kind of.
Or if you only ever eat like stuff with sugar in it, you'll never know what non-sugar stuff tastes like.
Yeah. It might be a bad allegory, but I think if you if you only eat sweet shit, then you're not going to know how something savory tastes. If you only eat McDonald's, then you won't know how an actual burger tastes. So, I guess that's a good allegory, yeah. So,
yeah, that's a good way to end.